Hey nerds, welcome to Nerdtastic. We're going to cover the Aarakocra today in our very first episode of Monsterlytics. To find out more about these Air Wardens, stick around. The Aarakocra is often described as a monstrous humanoid bird, with their taloned legs and, depending on which edition you favor, arms attached or separate from their impressive wingspan. As they traditionally resemble mixtures of eagles and parrots, their bones are hollow, similar to their more primitive counterparts, which allows them to be lighter than most at their size. Combine that light frame with those 20-foot wide wings, and you have yourself a flighty foe or airborne ally. Guardians of the elemental plane of air, the Aarakocra typically speak the native tongue from which they roam, Orin, so be sure to keep that in mind if they're a focus of an adventure. Their keen eyesight fits with the vigilant defenders of their home or accurate scouts seeking out other elemental planar threats throughout the lands. First, let me explain the Monsterlytics. While D&D is certainly left to the imagination of its players, we're going to cover 5th edition knowledge checks and abilities for the monsters in the books to give the DMs, Dungeon Masters, a bit of a point of a reference for when your players at the table suddenly shout, "Who's that monster?" According to the 5th edition basic rules, an intelligence check comes into play when you need to draw on logic, education, memory, or deductive reasoning. The arcana, history, investigation, nature, and religion skills all reflect aptitude in certain kinds of intelligence checks. That said, it also says a few pages back, the DM calls for an ability check when a character or monster attempts an action, other than an attack, that has a chance of failure. When the outcome is uncertain, the dice determine the results. If the total equals or exceeds the DC, the ability check is a success. The creature overcomes the challenge at hand. Otherwise, it's a failure, which means the character or monster makes no progress towards the objective or makes progress combined with a setback determined by the Dungeon Master. I like to use the following foundation of utilizing skills with intelligence checks. While it's entirely up to each individual's interpretation, you can take it or leave it, as I've definitely been known to throw some stuff around from time to time in different categories because each campaign is completely different. So for Arcana, we have aberrations, constructs, and elementals. For history, we have dragons, giants, humanoids, and monstrosities. For nature, we have beasts, plants, fae, and oozes. Religion, we have celestials, fiends, and undead. Now again, this is just a tool. If this helps you, then please utilize it until you find yourself more comfortable with your games. I use it in my games personally as a solid foundation in which to build from. There's 1 in a million ways to play Dungeons & Dragons. Now, DC 10. Passive information. With this difficulty class, I like to give the name of the creature, the language that it speaks, if it speaks at all, and the walking speed of the creature. I say walking speed because there are additional methods of movement in Dungeons & Dragons, and while for the Aarakocra it might seem more apparent, there are other methods that might be less known about to your adventurers. Now DC 15 I like to call, you may have encountered one before. With each tier, I include any information that precedes the current check because it's silly to know the minute details but forget the actual creature's name. Unless you play the absent-minded individual, which I do have a particular fondness for. That said, with this DC, I divulge the creature's proficient skills via descriptions. The Aarakocra's eyes dart swiftly back and forth as if it can hear something or see something you cannot. Additional modes of movement is also another one that I mentioned, and different attacks. So, for the Aarakocra's example, the Aarakocra before you has eyes that shift quickly between even your slightest movements. Their wings provide a much faster method of maneuverability with 50 feet every round. And not only is its javelin sharp and pointy, but their talons look sharper still. Now for DC 20, I label that, and live to tell the tale. With a check like this, you are quite an expert on this creature. Or you're a roadie for the niche bard that sings songs nightly about their highly detailed encounter with such a ferocious monster, and boy, are you tired of the roadie life. I give out any information regarding senses. Sight, beyond sight. Special traits such as the ability to cast spells innately or at higher levels. Any reactions, if any, that they possess. And any limited use or additional abilities. The Aarakocra has no extra senses beyond normal sight. It is unable to cast spells, and while it doesn't have any limited abilities, it is able to dive from 30 feet high and strike you harder with downward force against you. I also squeeze in resistances and immunities here, which the Aarakocra don't have any, to at least guide my players into knowing what not to do against creatures in a fight. And finally, DC 25. For all your knowledge needs, look no further. This is where any remaining information lies. You really know your stuff, and you tell all of your friends and family repeatedly these little facts while they smile and don't remind you that you told them last week. Also, you need to find more friends. Vulnerabilities are front and center here. If there's a weakness outside of the lore of the creature, then I save it for this high of a check. I say outside of the lore because if bears, for example, are a common antagonist of your campaign, and everyone knows that bears love honey and will do anything to get it, then let that be common knowledge. More specifically, if you are a small plant of small size, like a twig blight, more on that later, and it's common for small frail plants to catch fire, then of course they will have vulnerability to fire. In the end, it's really up to you. So, to recap for the Aarakocra. DC 10, passive info. Aarakocra. They speak Orin, and they have a 20 feet walking speed. DC 15. You may have encountered one before. They are skillful in perception. They have a fly speed of 50 feet. And they also have talon and javelin attacks. Using their flight to their advantage, Aarakocra dive in and out of battle with either gashes from their sharp talons or javelins thrust or thrown at their enemies. DC 20, live to tell the tale. Their sense of sight is normal through their eyes. They are not typically spellcasting capable, but again, your mileage may vary. Diving attack. One particular advantage of swooping down is that along with their flying capabilities, gravity also serves them well by means of dealing a little bit more damage on the dive down. DC 25. For all your knowledge needs. I also tend to throw any remaining information regarding creatures as I see fit, and you can certainly do it as you see fit. A great example of this is, as far as 5th edition is concerned, did you know that when 5 Aarakocra get together and dance for 18 seconds, they can summon an air elemental? And did you know that when the elemental returns back from whence it came, it can bring any Aarakocra immediately within 5 feet of it? If it were me, I'd throw that tidbit under the DC 20 check, as long as I had the patience not to show that off in a campaign. And that about wraps it up for the first episode. Keep in mind that this one might have been a little bit longer due to introducing and explaining the hows and whys, but I wanted to create this as another tool for DMs to use, as opposed to the rabbit hole that is the internet. What starts with honest research ends up in watching amusing videos till the morning, or reading blog posts until my eyes bleed. At least for me, anyway. Anyhoozle. In this series, we're going to cover each crafty, creepy, and crazy creature from A to Z. In the comments below, I want you to leave a great story regarding the Aarakocra in your games, or you can help spread the art love and send me some original art that I could showcase in a future video. Let me know if this video did you some good, and leave a like. And be sure to subscribe for more inevitable future videos. For now, nerds, I bid you farewell.